Hello everybody out there in YouTube land, internet land, Facebook land, whatever land you're watching this video. I'm making this video to participate in a contest by Hannah, which she calls her 1,000 subscribers contest. So I'm participating by making this video, and I'm going to submit it. She has asked us to pick 3 female artists that we absolutely love. Also, in genres of music, pick a subgenre of music, like rock and roll, and psychedelic rock would be a subgenre, and then to feature a piece of stereo equipment that we love. So I'm going to do that. And for female artists, when we think of female artists, we often think of female vocalists, but that's really kind of limited because female artists, there are not only vocalists, but musicians, songwriters, leaders of groups and such. I mean, it's the wide range, and females are half the population, so they are half of the creative force. But I'm going to do something a little different with my 3 selections, because a lot of people are putting up female artists who were during their time, who they grew up listening to. I'm going back to the periods of the 1930s, 40s, and 50s, what I call the classic vocal period. The Frank Sinatras, the Nat King Coles, the Tony Bennett's, and he's still going strong. Boy, the guy has an amazing shelf life. And then the females, the Judy Garlands, the Ella Fitzgeralds, type of singing. And this was an era where the great vocalist, I call the classic vocalist, it was just not an artist who had a great voice and got up there and sang the notes. It's their interpretation, emotional interpretation of songs. I mean, really singing from the heart. It's just one thing to get up there with a good voice and sing the notes, sing the song, but when you pull it inside of you, out of you from inside, with an emotional and expressed emotional content of a song, that's what I call vocal art. Okay. Some years back in the late 90s, I kind of got bored with what was going on in popular music and rock and roll, and I thought it would be a good time to venture off to the music of my parents' era when they were young. And so I did, and I listened to jazz and the vocalists from that period, even some classical, and made wonderful discoveries, and that music is now part of my repertoire of what I listen to daily. And so I picked 3 female vocalists out from that era. It was very hard because there was just so many, but I selected 3, and I'm going to share them with you. I got my Wikipedia cheat notes here, so I'm going to refer to those. The first one, the first artist, she did not have the widest range in her vocals, but she compensated for that in her phrasing and tempo. And she was really a vocal artist who wanted her vocals to sound like an instrument, and she was very in tune with the band members, the musicians. She worked with them. It wasn't, she came in the session, handed sheet music and sang. She actually interacted, and I'm talking about the late great Billie Holiday. Okay, And like I said, her range, she was very limited, but she um, had the invention of, she pioneered the phrasing and the tempo. And when you listen to her, when I listen to her, I just want to cry. Um, she took melancholy and sadness and turned it into art. I mean, freaking art. Look at that album cover. This is the Billie Holiday story, which is part of a series of artists who were on the MCA label or Decca. Um, there are others, Patsy Cline, Loretta Lynn, Kitty Wells, Ernest Tubb. Those are country artists, but they were on that series, on that label. And so they made the story series, and this is Billie Holiday's. Look at that album cover, all black around here, and then you see her portion of her face in that expression. You're entering the artistry of Billie Holiday. Okay, this album is recordings I consider her best period, later 40s up through late 50s, up to the time of her death. That's when her where her vocals, her singing really matured. I mean, the 30s was great and all that, but it seemed to have ripened at the time. She was working with the best people. So this has some of her best known songs. I'm just reading Solitude, God Bless the Child, Strange Fruit, Living Easy, Lover Man. Anyway, it's about 25 songs on this album. A great collection, and you don't find Billie Holiday albums at thrift stores too much. They're available on reissue 180 gram. I found this one at a thrift store. Billie is recognized as one of the greatest jazz vocalists, greatest singers ever. Her career spanned 30 years, nicknamed Lady Day by her friend and music partner Lester Young. Holiday had a seminal influence on jazz music and pop singing. Her vocal style, strongly inspired by jazz instruments, pioneered a new way of manipulating phrasing and tempo. She was known for her vocal delivery and improvisation skills, which made up for her limited range and lack of formal music education. Let me just read one other thing. Thank you for bearing with me. Oh, yes. And this is a quote from another singer. With few exceptions, every major pop singer in the U.S. during her generation has been touched in some way by her genius. She is Billie Holiday, who was and still remains the greatest single musical influence on me. Lady Day is unquestionably the most important figure on American popular singing in the last 20 years. And that's a quote by no other than Frank Sinatra. Billie had a very, very hard life. Practically abandoned by her parents. She was on her own at a very early age, and there was abuse on her. I won't go into details. She got into very abusive relationships, horrible substance problems, also which wreaked havoc on her voice later in life. And worst of all, the racism and the, Jim Crow laws that were in force, that period of her life, which affected all the black population. At one point, because she couldn't go through the front doors and in elevators of clubs and restaurants she was playing at, she said with that regard to that is, I just hate this world. I want to get the, out. So she had a very rough life. Toward the end, her voice got more raspy, a little bit more rough. But because of those life experiences, she was able to put emotions into more emotions into her singing. Her last album was called is called Lady in Satin. I should have grabbed it, but it's a landmark album, and it wasn't. A lot of people at first consider it disappointing because they were listening to it technically, but once they listened to it with the heart, it just really, really looked upon as a great recording. So I got this album here, and this is another album that was on the Columbia label. I had the later reissue, but I ran into this one at a flea market, which is an early issue of this album, Lady Day, and primarily recordings from the 30s. And this is our early reissue. You can see it has an early Columbia label, and inside the rice paper they used to use for the inner sleeve of albums. So that is my first artist, female artist, Billie Holiday. Isn't that a striking album cover? The second artist, vocal artist, had a very similar life to Billie Holiday as far as it being hard. Orphanage. She was actually raised in a brothel and lived in Europe during the World War II years. And I'm talking about, excuse me, my French is bad, Edith Piaf. Isn't that a great album cover, the expression of her face? I discovered Edith back in the early 2000s because I wanted to get into different type of historical music, and I was just blown away. We all know the French language is beautiful, but you hear Edith sing it, you realize it's an amazing language. The way she's able to phrase and speaks the language in song. It's just amazing. Again, she had a very hard life. They made a movie entitled the movie of her most famous song, and I'm going to try to pronounce it. I might have to just end up spelling it. La Vie en Rose, L-A and then V-I-E-N and the word rose. So they made a movie of her life, a bio movie in 2007, and it starred Marion Cotillard, and the actress, and she won for best female actress the Oscars that year. And I recommend you see that movie. I first listened to some of Edith's music first, and then see the movie. It's It's in subtitles because all the dialogue's in French, but don't let that scare you away. It's still very easy to understand, and it's not a bio of from the beginning of her life to the end. It's really interesting. Jump back and forth at various stages of her life. Very beautiful movie to look at too. This is I found some of Edith's her compilation put together recordings on vinyl at various thrift stores, but this was my go-to recordings of her. This is 30th anniversary Edith Piaf, 2 CDs, and each CD contains about 21 CD, 23 songs, and the other one 21 songs. So I would seek this out, see the movie, and if you run into any of her CDs at thrift stores, buy them, or order this online. Better, good quality here with a retrospective booklet. Okay, the last female artist entry, and get my Wikipedia cheat notes here. This lady was an American singer and pianist who had been cited as the most popular black female recording artist of the 1950s. Primarily jazz vocalist, she performed and recorded in a wide variety of styles, including blues, R&B, traditional pop music, and gave herself the Queen of the Blues as title. She was 1986 inducted into the Alabama Jazz Hall of Fame, and was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. So you have an artist who was not primarily a rock and roll artist inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. And I'm talking about Dinah Washington. Now, I've got a number of albums by her and some CDs as well. She had such a powerful voice that she could sing in a crowded room and did not need a microphone. She could have been if she came along later in life, she could have been a rock and roller very easily. Matter of fact, she died in relatively young in 1963, born 1924. Had she lived, I could imagine her recording at Muscle Shoals with the musicians there, because she had a good rhythm and blues sounding to her voice, and she had a very amazing life for the time she was here. She had a disposition, a kind of a mean disposition, temperament, and she demanded the very best out of people, the musicians she worked with, and it wasn't too often she gave you a second chance. She threw lavish parties, liked to hang out with the gangsters, So very, very, very interesting personality. A good person, a good subject to make another bio movie on. That would be great. But anyway, September in the Rain. Not Google, but go to YouTube. Listen to her recording of September in the Rain. It's a very nice, bouncy song. And there's really nice imagery to go along with it if you click on the right one. So those are my 3 female artists, vocal artists. And one more I would want to do a shout out. She's not included in my 3, but this is a young artist who's carrying on the tradition of the classic vocal era. I got a chance to see her perform live a couple years ago up in Washington, D.C. at Wolf Trap. And after the show, got a chance to meet her. I bought a copy of her album. She only has one album out. And she gracefully signed it for me. And her name is again, she was born in England, but she's, I believe she's French base, okay? She lives in France, like Edith. And her name is, she spells it ALA.NI. And you can see where she signed it for me. Right there, the lyric line, I rose like the morning sun, which is a line from one of the songs in this album called Darkness at Noon. And I had her write that because I wanted to send a message that I was paying attention to the lyrics. And I think it's a beautiful line, and one of the most beautiful songs I've heard in recent years. So she signed it, wrote the line, and personally, thank you, Lawrence. A little sign for love, and then her name, and she has very nice handwriting. There's a concert she does at a 4-song concert she does at a church, and I thought I had it pulled up. I'm gonna see if I can find it real quick. Thank you for bearing with me. I tell you what, I'm just going to provide a link to it because I'm wasting too much time finding it. But anyway, she does this 4-song concert at a church that's been converted to a little concert hall. 4 songs, and she uses all these really great theatric hand gestures as she sings, like Edith Piaf did. And the last song, Darkness at Noon, is so, the vocal expression is just wonderful. And toward the end, she leaps off the stage, bows her head back, and hits all these high notes. It's just amazing. So I'll provide that link if you want to watch it. It's about 16 minutes long. All she has is a rhythm guitarist and a harp player, the instrument. And so you could see that. So that's just, she's not included on my 3 artists, just a shout out I want to do on this video. And when I met her, she actually was the cashier at the little stand where they were selling, So she actually personally sold me this album, and I handed the $20 to her, and she signed it. Was very gracious. I had a chance to chat with her really quick. Okay. Now on to the second part, subgenres of music. And I chose something called, which is a subgenre of country music, and it's called alternative country. Okay, and there's been a number of artists in that field. I won't mention them except the ones that I'm going to show here, and the main person, got her CDs here, and I got an album, is Lucinda Williams. This is her landmark album, 1998 release, Cartwheels on a Gravel Road. And yes, she personally signed this for me. She did a concert in Hampton, Virginia, the Strawberry Festival, and I brought along all the CD booklets with me, along with a Sharpie, in case I got an autograph situation, which I did after the show. She came out and signed autographs for everybody who wanted an autograph. So not only do I have this one, I have her self-titled album. I think this came out in the early 90s, or the 80s, okay? And a middle album too called Sweet Old World. all autograph. But this album here kind of really gave her a wider audience. Cartwheels on a Gravel Road. I recommend that everybody listens to this because she really tells really great stories about her upbringing and rural life. You could see on the back the old car there. Um, car wheels on a gravel road. That's a song about her upbringing. And there's lines like this room better be picked up when I get back, as a parent would say to a child. One other artist, Gillian Welch, and her partner David. This is a early 2000 release called Time de Revelator, and I consider this the first great folk album of the new century. And I would recommend that. And I just like her dress there, the flowers on it. It's a special kind of flower. I don't know what it's called. Anyway, very cool. Oh, one other thing, Lucinda Williams. Since Cartwheel, she has went on to release a number of great albums too, great follow-ups, and this is one of them. The Ghost of Highway 20. This came out like 3 years ago, and inspired by her drives through Route 20. So you got just lonesome towns, the rural type of stories, and you have songs on here like Dust, House of Earth, Place of My Heart, Death Comes It, Doors of Heaven, Louisiana Story, Ghost of Highway 20, and I think this one here, Faith and Grace, which is about like an 18-minute song. It takes up most of the side, or one of the sides of the album. This is a two discs album set. She kind of takes on a role of a Southern preacher, preaching. I mean, she's not actually preaching to us, saying, she's just projecting the image of what it's like to be in the South in such a area where, good Southern preaching is quite common. There she is on the back there. And the album's cover's good because her text writing, her handwriting for the songs are here, and then a shot of the road there, the rural areas. So I would recommend that. Two other items for alternative country. And this guy's more associated with outlaw country, but I consider it alternative country. And that's this album here, Waylon Jennings, Dreaming My Dreams. If you've never been a Waylon Jennings fan, I would strongly recommend listening to this album. I think you would be very surprised. It's sort of like his Blood on the Tracks. And I got the cat over there scraping away. Something new, in continuing on with the genre of alternative country. And this is a new artist. She's still in a glass frame because I have her in my vinyl room. I have her displayed on the wall. This is Valerie June, her sophomore album, The Order of Time. Valerie June is amazing. She's in her mid-30s and had to really struggle to make it, to get the money to record a proper album. And she got sick with diabetes just as the time she got the money together to record an album. She told this story on CBS Sunday Morning. but eventually, she got the disease under control and got the opportunity to record a debut album called Pushing Against the Stone, which is magnificent. And then this follow-up has been a very important album to me since its release in 2016 or 17, okay? No, 2017, March. And if you go watch, she has this really, really, really twangy, voice that for some people it's an acquired taste. But if you listen to her, the more you listen to her, it's perfect for her expression of the type of songs she writes. She This album is just magnificent. Her music's been labeled as organic moonshine. The big critics had called her. It's a combination of country music, blues, folk, even some rock, blended into her own interpretation, and she just literally creates something new. So go to YouTube or streamline this album. It is amazing. Okay, so that covers the three female artists, the subgenres of alternative country, and some of the artists of that genre. And last thing I have to do is to show off a piece of stereo equipment that I like. And let me talk a little bit about that. When CDs came out and I jumped on the bandwagon, fortunately, I did not get rid of my albums. I said to myself, well, I better keep them, which I did. And just as albums were starting to make a comeback, I took them out and I set up a vinyl room and I hit the thrift stores, buying all the used vinyl. And I was lucky because I started doing it before the vinyl revitalization. So I kind of got on the ground floor of thrift store vinyl buying before the thrift store people got smart and started jacking up the prices, and before the flippers would go in there and buy everything. And so I was able to add to my vinyl collection tremendously, buying titles that I did not get the first time around, adding to my jazz album collection, my 60s pop stuff, and also a lot of eclectic type of music, which I won't go into right now. So that was great. Now, supplies are kind of drying up now because you got the flippers. You got people, when Uncle Harry dies, the former hippie, the family would, instead of just dumping the vinyl off thrift stores, they would bring it to independent record stores to hope to get some money out of it, or keeping some titles for themselves. Right now, the big thing is CDs are pretty abundant at thrift stores, and I got some amazing titles for like $1 each, or sometimes $2.50. So I'm taking advantage of that. Anyway, get back. So, CDs came along. Like a lot of other people, I kind of got rid of all my good stereo equipment because I went to the little more portable units like the Bose radio and other, small units, computers, speakers, and such. So I had to gradually buy some good stereo equipment at thrift stores, which I did. I found some amazing stuff, like a Sherwood Newcastle amplifier, high-end, retail for $1,700. I got it for $42 at a thrift store. With amplifiers, you got to be careful because it could be corrosion inside, or the connections need cleaning. So what I did was I bring a little wire, a little speaker, and a little CD, portable CD Discman with me. And a lot of thrift stores let me try a piece out if I'm considering buying it. Unfortunately, most of them have a policy, you gotta buy as is. You can't take it home for 24 hours, try it out. If it doesn't work, bring it back. Which I think should be the policy. Or at least they should have the equipment hooked up so you can try it out. So, you know, I've got the amplifier, I got speakers, I got a nice CD player, and turntables, other things. My main setup for listening in the vinyl room is in the other room there. But recently, I got these tower speakers called Skyline. I never heard of them, but you could just tell they're very high-end stuff. And I couldn't find much information on the internet on Skyline speakers, except they were made from a Scandinavian country manufacturer that has since went out of business. And they're beautiful speakers, very high-end, very nicely designed, and they sound great. I got them in a thrift store for $39, you know, because they had them hooked up so I could listen to them. And so I got them, and they're in my movie room right now, hooked up to the system. So I'm going to plonk the camera off and show you what they look like, okay? And we'll in this video, I'll do a few concluding remarks. Okay, I'm moving to the other side of the room. And this is my setup for watching movies or listening to vinyl. And that's one of the tower speakers. They have a cover for them, but I like them all. I like that look right there. So, you know, that's pretty cool. They have tweeters, two mid-range on top and the bottom, and down here on the side a bass, which, you know, covers on there. Take it off, you could see it. Very, very cool. So they're called Skyline, and I really like the design and also the material, because if you look on the side, they have that paneling there, right there, and again at the bottom, bass. So that's really cool. And again, I got them for 39 bucks, and they sound wonderful. So last view of my setup here. As you can see, I've been listening to some Nat King Cole this morning. Beautiful sounding album, very romantic. And my main vinyl room is in the other room, and I'll do a tour of that one day. But in here, this is kind of like my winter den now. I don't watch a lot of TV. I listen to mostly music. I'm on the internet a lot. So that's my video. We're running 38 minutes, so I'm going to cut it off right here. Plop the camera back on the tripod. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It's a bit long, but I had a lot to show and a lot to tell. I really, you know, making the video is more about, you know, sharing what I have and communicating with the vinyl community than trying to win the contest. So, you know, good luck with your video, and I want to wish everyone a nice day. Take care. Bye.